everybody, I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin from the great state of Michigan. We're going to try something a little bit different today. I wanted to try kind of at least once a week to come to our viewers back home with the 3 or 4 big things that are happening in Washington that are going to have a direct impact on our lives in Michigan and in the rest of the country. This week, we focused on a bunch of economic issues, particularly tariffs and what that's going to mean for our economy, but also this big Trump administration reconciliation bill, their big signature piece of legislation that we're all waiting for that will have major implications for people back home. And then an important issue of democracy and the Trump administration's continued rejection of a court order from the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court. So we'll go through those here in short order. Try to do this once a week, get more information on what's happening in Washington, the mess over here, and how it's going to affect you back home in Michigan. So first of all, on the economy, I think what we are watching right now is all the economic indicators are coming back, going in the wrong direction. Michigan and other states know exactly what it's like as we start a downturn, and we're seeing unemployment rates go up, we're seeing GDP rates go down. And it's something that we're watching very closely in a state like Michigan, where we're so dependent on the whims of the economy. Adding to that is the ongoing conversation on tariffs. Certainly Michigan is going to be one of the most affected states on tariffs, from our manufacturing to our farming industry. But it's important to review the bidding. There's been a lot of back and forth on tariffs over the last couple of months. So it's important to understand where we are. There is a 10% tariff on all foreign goods coming from outside the country. On the auto sector, there's a 25% tariff on all foreign cars coming into the United States. And while there's been some deal making in the past couple of weeks between the auto industry and the White House, we still are likely to see the price of a car go up, the price of many parts going up in the near future. And that's something obviously we watch very closely. Our supply chain in Michigan is deeply integrated with both Canada and Mexico, so you can imagine we're going to be deeply affected. More tariffs are on the docket coming up in the next couple of months, and the next moment we wait to hear what additional tariffs are going to be put on will be this summer in July. So what I have certainly been hearing from all our business owners, from industry, from all kinds of economic leaders in the state of Michigan is peak uncertainty that rivals the uncertainty they felt in COVID. And it's driving people to be conservative, to stop some of their investments. And certainly we're already seeing orders go down for major goods and services. Particularly, we see this in the trucking sector, where we are seeing orders for trucks go down because they don't need to move as many goods and services. So we're watching that very closely. The big enchilada that we're all waiting for here in Washington is President Trump's reconciliation bill. It's a wonky name, but it's the big, beautiful bill that he's been working on ever since he took office. So what we're waiting to see is the black and white of this bill. The Republicans here in the House and Senate have passed their budget guidance, but we haven't seen the text. And in the next, I would say, 3 to 8 weeks, we're going to see that text. It is very important that we understand what that bill is going to mean for a place like Michigan. And what I will tell you is, just based on the budget guidance, to get to those $6 trillion in cuts, there's almost no way to do it without significant cuts to Medicaid, at least taking some sort of look at Medicare Part D, the drug portion of Medicare. Obviously, we've seen the cutting of Social Security offices, or the intent to do that, the cutting of food assistance. So we are watching all of those programs, and Medicaid is the one that I wanted to give a preview on. In addition to the 2.8 million Michiganders who use Medicaid as their primary insurance out of 10 million Michiganders, Medicaid pays for a lot of things that you may have no clue about, right? So for instance, our rural hospitals, all hospitals really, but particularly our rural hospitals, depend on Medicaid reimbursement for patients that come in and need care. Our rural hospitals are deeply concerned about cuts to Medicaid. Our nursing homes, about 65% of our loved ones in nursing homes are there because of Medicaid. So our nursing home community, like the one I visited in Okemos last week, are deeply concerned about cuts to staff, not letting as many residents come and live there, and then potentially cuts to their facilities. Our mental health infrastructure, which is already in crisis, I would say, is not able to do, I would say, almost 85% of its work if Medicaid reimbursement doesn't continue. Home visitor coverage for our loved ones who are still aging in place and have disabilities at home. And then the one that, frankly, even I had to educate myself on was Medicaid to our schools. Our school districts receive Medicaid for help with students with disabilities, students with mental health challenges, students with health issues that need addressing in schools. So our superintendents have been voicing their concerns about a cut to Medicaid. So I wanted to put that on your radar. And of course, our hospitals, our health plans have already said, if you cut people from Medicaid and they go uninsured, they're still going to come into the hospitals. So we're just going to raise rates on everybody else on private insurance. So I just wanted to put that one on the radar as something that I'm watching very closely for the black and white text on. Lastly, the issue that I think is really kind of above the fold, important that we watch, is an issue related to democracy and what's going on right now with the Trump administration ignoring a court order from the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. It has to do with an immigrant who was removed from the United States, we believe through a series of confusion and errors, and sent to El Salvador. Very quickly, that issue went right up to the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, of the Supreme Court made a very explicit decision, a unanimous decision actually in the Supreme Court, that this immigrant deserves a right to due process, no matter who he is and what he has or has not done. And the Trump administration is, I think, week 3 of ignoring that court order. While there's been some back and forth and some calls and some delaying, we are watching this issue very closely, because if due process doesn't matter anymore, if an administration can ignore a court order from the highest court in the land, that should send a shiver down the spine of everyone in the United States, immigrant, American citizen, everybody. We have separation of powers here in this country, and so it's extremely important that we have the administration, frankly, have this showdown and be forced to bring this man back as a point and a precedent for everybody else who cares about the rule of law. So those are the 3 issues that I'm watching from Washington this week. Those are the 3 issues I'd encourage you to keep your eye on. We're particularly waiting for the bill text, because that will have major implications. Remember, Michigan's state budget is 48% federal dollars. So as the federal budget gets slashed, that will affect the state of Michigan and every other state in the country. So wanted to get those things on your radar. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.